It's podcadzo.
From boy on the outside to what's
Cowboy or
Cowboy
sweetheart.
This is good rock and roll
This
music.
is good rock and roll music.
Welcome to podcadzo, everyone.
Welcome to podcadzo.
New original introduction there.
Yeah, super original. No one's ever done anything like
Yeah.
it. Okay. Well, how are you?
Good. Let's get the pleasantries out of the way.
Yes,
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So we might seem in a bit of a rush. It's just because we are. We've got limited time, so we're gonna try to get right to the point. I have a very abstract and yet specific and niche topic for today's podcast, which is just I'm gonna call the new Scots in my life, because in the last week, there have been three Scots all introduced. Well, I knew of two of the Scots already, but the context in which I have listened to these Scots has been different in the last week. So new Scots, three of them.
Wait, first, should we introduce ourselves?
I'm Scott.
I'm Scott. All right. Please go ahead.
So, first and foremost, you mentioned the last time we spoke of a podcast that I've heard of before, but never, for some reason, it never landed in my memory that I should listen to it, and I never got around to checking it out. It's been out for a decade now. The first episodes started airing in 2014, so it's
That's
a 10-year-old
crazy.
podcast. The podcast I'm referring to is You Talking You Two to Me with Adam Scott and Scott Aukerman, and they affectionately refer to themselves as Scott and Scott on the podcast. Basically,
One sec, Julian. Make sure that camera is actually recording. I don't think I checked that one. Cool. Sorry for the
basically,
interruption.
the thing is we've kind of been loosely ripping off the You Talking You Two to Me format.
Totally.
I never even realized it because I
not-
said, never started listening to it until about a week ago.
You would have had no idea you've been ripping off that podcast.
It's
And you're
true.
not ripping off because you've never heard of it.
Right.
I have not been deliberately ripping it off. I think I was just such a fan of it, and it was so ingrained in my subconscious that our podcast has adopted some similarities to it.
Yeah, totally. And I think the thing about it that's funny to me is Scott Aukerman obviously has comedically influenced me. Not to say I'm like a fucking comedian.
Were
obviously
you a
I'm not,
Comedy
but
Bang Bang fan?
I was a big Comedy Bang Bang fan. And I am just a fan of Scott Aukerman in general. He has a Comedy Bang Bang podcast that's pretty good. And obviously Adam Scott, Step Brothers, Parks and Rec. Those are the main things I know him from.
Have you seen Severance? on Apple
I
TV?
haven't. I
Severance
definitely
is
wanna check it out.
So good, man. It's really good. Yeah, Adam Scott is the man. I'm a big fan of his.
So yeah, basically, I think we've been kind of ripping them off in a few ways. The first way, obviously, is they never actually talk about the thing that they say they're going to talk about.
Which, that might just be us not being great podcasters. And
I
like,
guess, yeah.
that's not
the
ripping them.
difference is they're doing it on purpose.
They're doing it deliberately. We just can't stay on topic.
It's an important distinction to make, for sure. But they're very riff heavy, a lot of riffing. But they're always making fun of the fact that they don't really talk that much about you two.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it's kind of the same for the REM and the Springsteen ones. I'm definitely going to listen to the REM ones. I'll probably listen to the Springsteen ones if it's anything like the
And there's
U2
Talking
ones.
Heads.
Oh, yeah, the Talking Heads also.
REM is definitely the same. I kind of forget the Talking Heads, so I never finished those. But they were
Okay.
good. And then the Springsteen ones, I'm like 4 episodes deep right now, and those are a lot more focused. They still obviously riff and goof around, but
Yeah.
no, you know what? They did the Born to Run episode, and like it was like a 2-hour long episode, and they maybe spent 15 minutes on the album, so I take that back.
Yeah. Well, and like pretty much the entire time that not the entire time that they're doing the podcast, but for the majority of it, they're hyping up the release of the new album, which at the time was Songs of Innocence.
Mhm.
And then when the Songs of Innocence episode comes out, they like don't talk about it at all, which is pretty funny because it's just like you spent so much time saying you're gonna go through the whole album, you're gonna like do it track by track, and there are multiple Songs of Innocence episodes. So, but the first one, I'm like halfway through it, and they haven't talked about Songs of Innocence at all.
So you're already that deep. So you've gone through.
I kind of have gone out of order. Full disclosure, I started with the Achtung Bebe.
Achtung Bebe. I forgot about that.
I started with the first one. Realized that they weren't going to talk about Achtung Baby at all the entire episode. And then I listened to the second Achtung Baby episode. And then I skipped ahead and listened to How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb.
Nice.
And then I listened to the Slowing It Down with Paul F. Tompkins because I am a huge Paul F. Tompkins fan.
Yeah.
And then I can't really remember. I haven't listened to the Zooropa one yet. I listened to the song, I listened to the No Line on the Horizon one because I wanted to know how they felt about it. And I guess this brings me kind of casually to my second point, which is as far as the U2 is concerned, I don't really know if I've agreed with a single take that Scott Aukerman has had. And I've disagreed with about half of the takes that Adam Scott has had. Because, so you have Scott Aukerman, who's like, doesn't really care that much about new U2. Like, he is like Joshua Tree and Rattle and Hum, and then doesn't, I mean, he likes like the Achtung Baby era, but he's not like in love with it. And then like Zooropa, he likes more. And then like, obviously they said that they both liked Everything You Can't Leave Behind, or All That You Can't Leave Behind. I can't even remember what it's fucking called. And then like Scott Aukerman started just like ripping How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb, and it's like, I don't know, maybe it's just because it means so much to like me as far as when it came out, as like my development as a person, but like I don't get it. Like, that album's so fucking good. And then I was like, well, surely he's gonna fucking hate No Line on the Horizon. And then he was like, oh, this is one of their best ones. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then Adam Scott reminds me of someone else that I know or knew as a child whose name is also Scott. If you're listening to this, Scott, I'm sorry
But that's
for
not
ratting
the
you
third
out.
Scott that's come into your life this week.
No, it's
that's
not.
an old Scott.
That's an old Scott, but it's just funny. His name's also Scott.
Yeah.
But Scott was kind of like the ultimate fan, where like in his eyes, U2 like couldn't fuck up, and like everything they released, he was like, it's great, it's perfect. I feel like Adam Scott's kind of that way too, where he's just like he likes it just because it's U2. It doesn't matter the quality of it as much.
So if I can interrupt you for a second, it's been a while since I've listened to the You Talking U2 to Me. It was like, I discovered it 2019 maybe. I remember it was like pre-COVID I was listening to it. But so I don't remember what those episodes were like too much, but from like the Springsteen episodes, and I remember the R.E.M. and Talking Heads episodes, I tend to agree with Scott Aukerman's takes more often, just because Adam Scott doesn't really have any takes ever. It's just like, he doesn't really, Scott Aukerman's like a legitimate critic of the music, and he really drives the show, and you can tell he's like doing the homework and stuff, and like and deep on the albums. And Adam Scott, I love him on the podcast, but everything is just kind of like, I like it. It's not my favorite song, but it's pretty good.
I think it's a little different in the U2 era because Adam Scott is such a U2 fan, and I think Scott Aukerman checked out of U2 for a while, whereas Adam Scott was like a fan the whole time.
Yeah.
So it's like, and there's even been times where like they have had like homework assignments where they're like, we're gonna listen to this album and go track by track and give like an analysis, and then like Adam Scott does it and Scott Aukerman doesn't do it at all, and Adam Scott's just like, what the fuck, man?
Okay.
It kind of trades off a little bit, but I think Adam Scott's more qualified, or maybe not more qualified, but he's just more comfortable talking about U2 because he spent so much time listening to it, but he like can't criticize it, which I think is why I do find myself agreeing with Scott Aukerman a little bit more, because like Adam Scott will try to find the good stuff in the bad stuff, and Scott Aukerman will kind of just be like, well, this is shit. But where we differ is like the stuff that I think is shit is a little different than what Scott Aukerman thinks is shit. And they're a lot, they're not a lot older than us, but they're a bit older than us, so they have more context as far as
They're a
like
lot older than us.
the cultural significance around like the releases themselves. So like obviously Scott Aukerman kind of doesn't like the Achtung Baby era as much because of like the persona that Bono like took on for a while. And I don't really have that context as much because I only ever saw Bono being that way from afar, like through concert film and stuff like that. So it was never as like on the nose for me, and it didn't hit home as hard for me because I wasn't as familiar with like the fucking like country roots, like Americana Bono from like the Rattle and Hum era. And I always have thought Rattle and Hum is like their worst album.
Yeah.
And so I think I know Scott Aukerman doesn't love Rattle and Hum, but I know he reveres it more highly than like the 90s U2.
Well, I remember
so
them
I
talking
think-
about the DVD and stuff too, like the
Yeah.
movie that accompanied it and that being impactful.
Well, and the other thing about it is just how U2 always went too far to the extreme. And I think that that's a good kind of encapsulation of their career is like
True.
they spent the 80s kind of taking Americana too far, and then they spent the 90s kind of taking like experimental like pop disco like too far, because obviously pop in the late 90s, a lot of people tend to shit on that album, and I love that album. I think it's really good. And like they were talking about like Miami and the Playboy Mansion and how those songs are like the worst U2 songs ever, and I was like, oh, I kind of like those songs because of how different they are and how much they reached out and experimented. But then that's how Scott Aukerman was talking about No Line on the Horizon. He's like, they just really like let it all hang out on this one, and they're like trying shit they've never tried before. And I'm like, this record's so boring.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't get it.
It's super middle ground, you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a weird take.
I don't know.
Here, wait,
So
hold on a second.
can you lick your lips now? Can you lick the mic? Nice. Okay, so yeah. I guess that kind of more or less summarizes my feelings on the podcast.
Yeah. Good to get that out of the way.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's a very interesting experience as a U2 fan, because obviously it's ironically branded as a U2 podcast, but it's really not one. But when they do talk about U2, I'm kind of scratching my head a little bit sometimes and just thinking like, I just don't hear I don't hear these songs the same way that you guys hear these songs, which is obviously fine. It's how music's supposed to be. But yeah, I think the funny thing for me about it right now is how much they just riff on nothing. And that kind of
Wait, is this
reminded
an
me-
episode of how much they riff on nothing?
yeah. I think it is.
We're
Let's jump
not
in.
actually doing that bit.
Yeah, we don't have the music for it, so
And I'm not editing this at all.
no.
I would
never
not be
do.
willing to do that in post. Unless it's a fucking air horn noise, I'm not putting it in.
Okay, well, here. Now you have
God
to.
damn, now I gotta. I'll have to remember 14 minutes.
Nope.
in
Blah, blah, blah,
about-
blah, blah. I'm not giving you
That'll
any.
work.
I'm not giving you any hints. Okay, so
Who's the third Scott?
okay.
God damn it.
I think I don't want to go so far as to say I've created a good segue from Scott to Scott here, but I think,
Well, I just did the segue. I said, who's the third Scott?
but a
God damn it.
conceptual segue as far as what we've been talking about. You know what I mean? A bridge
Okay,
between
just
the Scotts.
get to it.
So this third Scott, who I have recently discovered, is a YouTuber, and I discover YouTubers a lot. It's not like a new thing. I always try to like watch different types of shit. This guy popped up just I think because of some other stuff I've been watching recently. Do you know Defunct Land?
Yeah, dude, you sent me. I watched. I meant to tell you that I watched some Defunct Land.
Nice.
It's pretty entertaining.
Yeah,
Yeah.
shout out to Defunct Land. things along those lines. So he kind of does. His name is Scott Kramer. He kind of does a wide variety of topics, from like product reviews to more just like commentary conversations, and he might do reacts. I haven't really seen any reacts. I'm not big on reacts, so I don't really watch those anyway. But this video popped up, and I don't want to play it, obviously, because I don't want to do my boy Scott like that. But I highly suggest everyone go check it out. The Scott Kramer YouTube. The video is called "The Life-Changing Power of Graduation Speeches," and it starts out pretty like cheesy. He's pretty much just reviewing like a couple funny speeches, and then he kind of starts talking about the idea of people being inspired by other people, and the idea of, I mean, for lack of a better term, just how nothing's original. Obviously, a lot of the time as like creators, people kind of face this battle of people always telling them that they're like ripping off someone else.
Yeah.
And I think it's
like
important.
Us ripping off you talking to me. That's
Exactly.
feedback we've gotten a lot.
Yes, people tell me all the time, like, quit trying to be Scott Aukerman.
Sorry, we'll get back to Scott Kramer.
Of course.
Which Scotts are we? I think we can both kind of ride the line between the two.
I think,
Or like
I don't know. I think I'm
one.
Adam Scott because I think you kind of steer the ship a bit more. I think you kind of generally come at me with more of the ideas, and I'm just soaking in the ideas and reacting to them. And I also think I think Adam Scott has that kind of like dry deadpan thing going on where one of my favorite bits they do is like when Scott Aukerman's talking at him, we'll just be like, "Oh, if you just shut up for a second, just shut up," like shit like that.
They do have a great
I think I have a tendency to be a bit more of a dick for comedic effect than you do.
I think that's fair. Fuck face.
See, it's just unnatural when you do it, you fucking loser.
God damn, that hurts.
Bury it deep down inside, baby.
Other similarities.
Stuff it down.
Aukerman's tall and lanky.
It's true.
He drives most of the production. He's really producing the podcast.
It's true.
And has a less successful film career.
It's true. My OnlyFans is really popping off these days.
Film.
It counts.
Yeah.
I use an old film camera.
True. Some questionable
How
lighting.
I get it on the internet, no one knows.
You just run like the actual film by a webcam. Shot by shot.
Frame by frame, yeah. No, I think not to,
Sorry, get back on Scott Kramer. I distracted you.
Well, no, I'm not done with this Scott analogy yet.
Okay.
Don't fucking rush me through it.
One second.
Okay?
Speaking, I'm a Tompkins head as well. Going back to your Paul F. Tompkins statement.
Sure. Have you seen After Midnight on CBS yet?
No, the one that used to be on
Taylor Tomlinson show.
Oh yeah, the Taylor Tomlinson one.
used to
No,
be-
I have not seen. I like Taylor Tomlinson. I like her stand up.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to watch the actual show, but I've not seen it.
Okay.
I was thinking of At Midnight, which is the Comedy Central
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
I was a huge At Midnight fan. Paul Tompkins was on there a lot. Anyway, what were you going to say about Paul F?
Aukerman and Paul F. have a podcast together with. I feel bad for blanking her name. Very funny female comedian who I'm also a fan of.
Yeah. It's been
called
mentioned.
3. I just started listening to it. It just came up in my recommended. But they're funny.
I'm gonna Google it because I want to shout
Because
that
Aukerman
podcast
has a
out.
lot of. He runs the whole Freedom. Okay, he runs the whole Earwolf podcast network.
Right, and obviously, You Talking You Two to Me is an Earwolf podcast.
It's crazy. It was 2014. I didn't realize they were one of like the first podcasts then, or not first ones. Like by 2014, podcasting, but like that was before it became. I think anything before like 2017, you're kind of an original podcast. Because like what Rogan and Maron started in like 2010,
I think
2009.
Oh man, I want to say
Even
Maron
earlier?
started in like 2007, 2008. Laura Lapkus is the other
Laura
host
Lapkus,
of Freedom.
Yeah.
And then let's see, when did What the Fuck start?
While you're looking that up, a crazy piece of trivia that I picked up from Time Crisis, shout out an internet radio show that we've mentioned many times.
Oh, okay. September 2009 is when What the Fuck started.
Oh, wait.
So sorry.
I said 2009.
Yes, you were right.
Then you corrected me.
You were right.
I was wrong. I was right the whole time.
You were.
Fuck you. I don't like being mean. What was I just saying?
I like it when you're mean to me.
Time Crisis.
Makes me kind of horny.
I know it does. I like that part of it. Time Crisis turned me on to the fact that the first podcast ever, what word should I use?
Like
transmitted
podcast.
Yeah, that adopted the RSS protocol or whatever podcasts use was actually a Grateful Dead song. I forget which Grateful Dead song, but whoever was one of the creators of podcasts streamed a Grateful Dead song as the first.
Cool, they get credit for another thing. Yeah. Great. Fucking sick. I think Mark Maron really rolled it out as the platform that everyone kind of bases their podcasts on today. It's like
Maron's the GOAT. Since we're talking about podcasts, this is a podcast about podcasts.
Well, we were supposed to be talking about Paul F. Tompkins.
Well, no, I just wanted to mention that one thing about Paul Tompkins.
Okay, cool.
He has a podcast with Scott Ackerman.
Okay.
But something we haven't talked about. We talked about Maron. We're both Maron fans.
Yes.
Did you ever, or do you even still listen to Rogan?
No and no.
Mm-hmm.
Never listened to him. Kind of don't want to listen to him now. I've definitely listened to clips. Like, there's a fuckload of Joe Rogan clips on the internet.
It's impossible to avoid that.
So yeah, I've watched clips. I've come away from some of them thinking that wasn't horrible, and I've come away from others thinking that was fucking horrible.
Mm-hmm.
I tried listening to the Anthony Kiedis one just because I was like, oh, this could be interesting.
I listened to that one. That one was strange.
It's just so dry. Like,
Very
it's
dry.
kind of... Moments of it can be kind of interesting, but it's over 2 hours long, and I kind of feel like it's just like shooting the shit for the vast majority of it. Not to say we don't do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think... And I don't even think it's necessarily Joe Rogan's fault, but just the way that I think he's accepted the role of trying to, like, go after alternative information is just a little too weird for me. Like, some things are just like the truth, and they should just be the truth. And I think Joe Rogan tries to push that a little too hard sometimes with certain things.
And it's not necessarily
just for the sake of being devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the devil. Yeah, anyone playing devil's advocate bothers me.
Yeah,
just in general, you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
The devil's not a good guy.
Right. No one needs you to just. No one needs you to just contradict the status quo just because you can. Like, it doesn't really serve anyone any good. And not to say that that's all he does. Obviously, he does other stuff too, and his podcast reaches a lot of people, and it's like the most popular podcast in the world, so it definitely is doing something right. It's just not for everybody.
Not even podcast, it's the most popular media in the world.
People go there for facts.
Yeah.
People go there to stay up to date on certain things. I also just think it's weird, like, and I think we've talked about this in the past, but like, just as far as Joe Rogan and like the Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura universe and like the Ari Shaffir, like,
dude, I cannot tolerate Bert Kreischer. He is so fucking annoying and horrible to listen to.
Sure.
And I think do you have this? I feel like everything he says is a lie. I feel like he lies constantly. I feel like nothing that comes out of his mouth is the truth.
I think he lives in a world of a little bit of delusion. Yeah.
Well, I think he's just a straight up liar too. I think he just tells fibs.
I mean,
I've known like compulsive liars, and the way Bert Kreischer tells stories.
Can you tell when I'm doing it?
Yours is a different thing because yours you have the sociopath thing going as well. So you don't
I like
really
to
have
flex that
tells.
a lot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry, we don't need to just shit on Bert Kreischer.
No,
And his stand-up
let's do
his
it.
stand-up sucks.
I think, and I'm not. Fuck! I just shat on people who play devil's advocate, and I'm about to try to play devil's advocate. I agree with everything you just said. He's really hard to listen to. His comedy definitely is subjective. Like, it's not for everybody. Not everyone's going to be into it. He definitely has a tendency to exaggerate things, or also, just kind of like bend the truth sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's probably a bit of narcissism going on, for sure. It's hard kind of to not be a narcissist if you're a stand-up comedian, like thinking that you're funny enough to stand up on the stage and get everyone to pay attention to you and then hold that attention for an hour. That requires a little bit of narcissism. Also requires a little bit of narcissism to put a podcast on the internet where you're talking about fucking nothing but stuff that other people have done. But also, that's an aside. So, I don't know. I think,
but also we hate ourselves,
and we make that known. We're very public about our self-hatred. No, I think with Bert Kreischer, it's just his core fan base looks past all that because they think he's a good guy at heart. And I kind of think that too. Like, I think if
well, see, now I feel bad for shitting on him.
No,
he does seem like a nice guy.
If we ran into Bert Kreischer on the street and we were just like, "Hey, what's up, man?" He would be like, "Hey, like, how are you?"
Yeah,
and he'd be like a human being.
Totally.
But like, if we ran into Tom Segura on the street, he'd probably just like call us poor or fat or something and like laugh at us for being not as good as him.
Dude, I saw this thing one time in public. A guy involved looked exactly like Tom Segura, and it's affected how I feel about Tom Segura ever since. So I was at the Magic Rap in Old Town Fort Collins doing audio for a show, and a guy sat right in front of me in the mixing position, and bald guy, like I said, looked exactly like Tom Segura, similar what's the word I'm looking for?
Just kind of like
mannerisms.
Yeah.
Similar mannerisms. And I saw him get in like one of the most vicious fights with this other woman for no reason across a table from him, and he actually physically hit her. Not hard, but he like I don't even it was so bizarre, and it escalated so quickly. And you could tell he was just a psychopath.
Yeah.
And just ready to motherfuck someone. And he like it wasn't enough so the woman like even did anything, but he like physically touched her and did something weird. And ever since then, like, I've been a little bit I can't not think of that when I see Tom Segura. And it's affected me.
That's interesting. Okay, I think there's a couple things about Tom Segura that kind of, to me, scream that he's like utterly disconnected from reality. The first thing is, I don't know if you saw this. Do you follow him on like Instagram or anything?
I do, but I haven't been on Instagram at all lately, except for the Podcadzo page.
The 4 Podcadzo posts a day.
Yeah.
JK.
It's one per week.
It's like one per week. Yeah. Anyway, he did this thing where he was at the airport and he found the lady's purse, and then he like returned it to her because he like made a post on Instagram and she saw it, and then he like stroked his own cock about it for super long, and they like talked about it on his podcast and stuff where he was like, I don't know if you saw, but I did this thing, and then like talked about how he reunited this lady with her purse and how grateful she was and all this crap. And it's kind of like, the fact that you're using multiple of your own platforms to like tell everyone what a good person you are kind of like points in the direction that maybe you're not the greatest, that you need your ego stroked fucking constantly. And then the other thing is he just like always reacts to everything by just mocking. Like, he reacts to criticism by mocking. He reacts to praise by mocking. Like, no matter what happens, he just says something fucking mean. And it's just like, I used to love it and think it was hilarious, but now it's like from a different perspective almost, where it's like,
well, how much of
it's
it?
not just because he's fucking skinny. And he always says like, people just think I'm a dick now because I'm skinny. And it's like, no, like people think you're a dick now because you flaunt your money and you like genuinely seem to think people who don't work as hard as you or stay as busy as you are just fucking pathetic
he seems
losers.
more like a CEO than like a comedian
Right?
now.
Yeah.
Like the bald head, the beard, being in shape, being so fucking rich.
And a lot of his comedy is more commentary on things like that, you know, where it's just like, oh, I was at the gym and blah blah blah.
Did
This
you see
fat guy was being fat?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
okay.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Did you see Sledgehammer?
I did see Sledgehammer. Yeah.
I thought it was weak.
It was mid.
Yeah.
It definitely, I laughed a few times. And I know a lot of people, and I feel bad for Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura, because I know a lot of his more OG fans like rip on him a lot for like making comedy like about his kids or like about his day-to-day life more and like less
Yeah, but that's his life.
bizarre situations and shit like that. And I like that. Like, I like comedy that is more just personal and reflective of day-to-day life.
Well, he's always like a storyteller, comedian.
Totally.
And that's just like the stories he has to tell now.
Yeah, but a lot of people are just like, I don't want to hear comedy about your kids. Like, I don't give a fuck about some funny shit your kids did. And it's like, well, that's his life. So I respect that. But the energy he like puts into the delivery of the set is like lacking for me, where like I feel like it's kind of just like he's
I think that's
going
what got
through the
me.
motions a
Kind
little
of phoning
bit.
it in.
Yeah.
And yeah, didn't have that same edge that a lot of his earlier comedy had. I saw him one time in Denver, and I laughed harder than I maybe ever have. It was amazing. And I'm sure if you saw the Sledgehammer live, it'd still be amazing.
Right. Well, and I think it's kind of different for everybody, because like Mark Maron can deliver almost 2 hours sitting down on a stool the entire time, and it's still
Just
like
captivated
very
the whole time.
captivating.
Yeah.
Whereas some people have to be like using the entire stage, and they have to have like props and set design to like really sell their comedy. So I think, yeah, it's kind of a case by case basis, but for the most part, like, I'm not saying Tom Segura has to be fucking using the stage and going crazy, but he definitely needs to either put more effort into the delivery of the jokes or the setup of the jokes, or he needs to be more involved with the audience, because it just seemed like a bit of a detachment issue going on. And that's one thing I will say about Bert Kreischer. Whether or not his comedy is mid, like, he's never detached from the audience. He's always like doing his best to be a showman, which I think is also why some people fucking hate him. But
True.
It definitely shows that he cares about giving a good end result.
Yeah. Okay. Back to Scott Kramer, because we need to make some sort of clip to get him on the pod.
So basically, this little video about commencement speeches, I just wanted to call attention to it because he makes a point at the end and throughout to kind of just say, like, content creation these days is really hard because you obviously can't really make something original without other people saying you're ripping it off from someone else. And I feel like we fall into that in a musical sense and also from a podcast perspective, because if we were a podcast with clout, I'm sure people would be just saying, oh, this podcast is just a ripoff of this. It's a worse version of this, whatever. And obviously from a musical perspective, like, we probably have experienced versions of that in the past where it's just like, oh, this band's just like this band, but worse. Or they just try to sound like these guys. And obviously
I've gotten so many funny, not in Cadzo, or I guess in Cadzo too, I've gotten funny comparisons, but like every other group I've been in, some of the things I'm compared to, I'm like, really?
Right.
And I think a lot of it too is just like a lot of people today don't listen to rock music or like don't have any reference for like indie music or anything. So like if they hear something that sounds like rock, they're just gonna relate it to
you sound
like
like
the
Led
rock
Zeppelin.
I got Coldplay a lot with Wax. I got Red Hot Chili Peppers a lot with Savage Cabbage. And all of them was like, I don't see that at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well, and I think that just goes to show people, especially on a smaller scale, people use that as a way to try to compliment you. Like,
Yeah.
they try to relate what they're hearing from you to like their own world of knowledge, and then they're like, oh, this kind of in my brain computes to being like this, and I like this thing, so obviously it's a compliment. Like,
Exactly.
you sound like Red Hot Chili Peppers, and if someone told me that, I would be like, fuck you, dude. Like,
and that's how I feel. I'm always like, no. Like,
and I think on a larger scale, it kind of does become an insult a lot of the time. Like, kind of what Scott Kramer's talking about, him getting compared to other YouTubers, and it's like, well, obviously I draw influence from those YouTubers because they preceded me and I watched them when I wanted to get into YouTube. But now that I do my own thing, it's like drawing influence from someone is highly different from just blatantly ripping them off.
Yeah.
And
on that same note, Julia and I were just talking about this. Julia said that I get told I look like people more than anyone else in the world, probably ever.
I get told I look like Charlie Day at least once a week.
Yeah, but at least
I'll throw that your way.
The thing about me is it's never the same person.
That's interesting.
Like,
and I don't think you look like anybody.
I'm sure you get told you look like Charlie Day more than, because you do kind of, which is a compliment. Both are very handsome guys, and you're both very funny.
People only tell me that. For the most part, people only tell me that after they've known me for a little bit.
Yeah. It's, you got to know your personality.
I think it's not just
your
because
joking
I
style,
look
the way
like
you
Charlie
talk.
Day. It's because, I'm like loud and kind of brash like Charlie Day is in Always Sunny. Like, Charlie Day isn't like that in real life at all.
Yeah.
You know?
The thing about, I don't think I've ever been told I look like the same person twice.
Who have you been told you look like?
The last one, it was just last week. I was in Portland, and someone in Portland said I look like Andrew Callahan from Channel 5, which I think is only because right now I have the short hair and the mustache, which he's been rocking in like recent Channel 5
Really?
videos. Yeah.
He cut his hair?
Yeah, for a little bit. When he was doing like the Philly Streets episode, he had a buzz cut and a mustache. And so I was like, I guess that. And then when I had the like long hair, I got compared to every celebrity that has long hair, but only once, never the same. Like, I got Keanu Reeves one time, which was the sickest comparison I ever got. That was super nice. But I only got it once, and it was a super drunk lady in Vegas. Yeah, and just stuff like that. And
how often does this happen to you?
Once a week, probably. I get told I look like someone, and it's someone totally different every time. Yeah, I can't think of anyone I've gotten twice. Someone told me I look like Jerry Garcia one time.
You look literally nothing like Jerry
so
Garcia.
Crazy.
He's like a short, fat, hairy man.
Yeah.
And you're like
that was
tall.
when I had longer hair, too. Someone said I look like Jerry Garcia.
But even then, like, your hair wasn't... I mean, okay, sure. You can have it, whoever the fuck you are that did that. But I don't trust you.
My dad told me I look like the Edge one time. Which
maybe.
Also one of the sicker ones I've gotten. Keanu Reeves and the Edge are top ones.
I don't think anyone's... It's weird because, like... this could just be me. But the Edge, especially in, like, the 70s, was, like, big dog, like... trying to be fucking sexy, handsome Americana Edge, never wearing a shirt, always wearing the leather vest with the hat. I just feel like he always just seemed like such a fucking dork. Like, he's just always been a little dorky boy.
I think he's settled in well to the hat goatee vibe.
The beanie thing is a weird choice to stick with for over
to
20
wear a beanie
years.
every day for 20 years. It's pretty wild. But you got to respect it.
Like, I don't...
And you got to respect calling yourself the Edge for 50 years.
Or Bono.
Yeah, or Bono.
You have to respect calling yourself
the
Bono
Edge is
and
crazier.
then acting
Edge
the
is
way
crazier.
that you do.
Bono sounds like just a funny name. Like Sonny Bono, or, it could be a last name or something. The Edge is crazy.
Bono just didn't have a good shelf life. It worked really well for a long time. Like, in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, Bono was like... an image,
was until South Park started shitting on him.
Well, it was until they started shitting on their own career by continuously releasing horrible music.
They should have retired somewhere in there.
Yeah, they should have quit after How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb.
Yeah.
But either way, we can wrap this up if you want.
Yeah.
We have people here now, and these people refuse to come onto the camera because they're scared, timid little fuckers.
Oh, Benson's coming on. We got Benson in the room.
You got any feelings about you too?
What?
You got any feelings about U2? Yeah. What's your favorite U2 album? Yeah.
Yeah, not
man of
surprised.
taste.
Yeah. A cool guy doesn't listen to U2. Okay.
My brother did. He's 10 years older than me, so.
Oh yeah. Okay. So
You guys are dated.
Fail.
he thought U2 was the shit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, basically, where I wanted to go with this Scott Kramer thing, we can jump into it again later too. His videos are cool. This video about speeches you should definitely check out, and you should let me know how you feel about it. The main takeaway that I got from it was just, yeah, we should do our own thing and not be afraid to let our influences shine. But I just wanted to pull up his main page here, kind of show you where he's at. He watched every Super Bowl commercial, and that was a very good video. It started in
Was
like
that
the
like
90s,
a reaction
but,
video?
it's kind of like a reaction video, but it's also just like a commentary on just how society's changed over the years. He did this really good video about GoDaddy commercials and like what the fuck that was all about and why those happened.
Those are great. With Danica Patrick.
Yeah, there's a lot of... He does one about Thanksgiving Day parade accidents, which is crazy. Like, I didn't know there were so many like balloons crashing into
I like the
lights,
Barney one.
and then lights falling off and hitting people in the head and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, his videos are great. His content is awesome, and I'm formally inviting him to be on this podcast if he would like to ever.
There you go. There's the clip.
Yes, please, Scott Kramer, join us for a very in-depth, intense interview about your life and your creative choices.
And also, if you like U2.
And if you like U2. If you like Bono's The Fly Glasses.
Yeah. What your favorite era of Bono is.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
From Boy on the Outside to Strange at First. This is... How did
Get
they wrap
on
it
your
up? I
boots.
forget. Yeah.
We hope you find what you're looking for.
There it is.
Please don't sue us.
Goodbye.